podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can stay updated for all my future podcasts. Today we have a very special guest joining us, Maggie Kanzki, a renowned relationship coach, expert, and international best-selling author of the book, Owning Your Destiny, Overcoming Toxic Relationships, and Finding True Love. She's an inspirational and influential speaker. Maggie is also an advocate for domestic violence. She's the CEO and owner of Owning My Destiny and the founder of Educating Children and Families. Maggie, welcome. It's such a privilege to have you on the Simply Real podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jennifer. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You know, I heard you speaking on some platforms, and I was just so inspired by your story and everything that you're doing to empower women and your journey with domestic violence. So tell us a little bit first about your book. I'm so excited to hear about this beautiful book that you've written.
Oh, well, thank you for asking, because actually, I believe that most of us have a book inside of us that we often tell the world that we want to write. But unfortunately, we kind of just walk out of the opportunity, kind of procrastinate to the point where it never happens. In my case, it was after I started working on myself. I had 2 previous toxic relationships. And I needed to know who I am. How did I end up in these types of relationships? What was it about me that attracted these people? And in the process, I realized that I started journaling even more than I used to. And the book came out. It's just that I didn't really work too hard on it. I actually met my publisher in January of 2019, I believe it was. And then 3 months later, the book was ready. I did keep the book in until my birthday, because I wanted it to be a birthday gift for myself, from me to me.
Beautiful gift.
So it came out on June and on the day of my birthday. But yeah, that's how the book came out. And it's actually my story. So I can share a little bit about it later.
Yeah. So, and you know, you're so right. We all have a book within us, and some of us can get it out. Some of us, you know, are a little nervous and scared to tell our story of overcoming challenge and adversity. Mm-hmm. And your story is one that's filled with so much hope and inspiration. And it's really about empowering other people and giving them the knowledge that they can overcome. And, you know, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey and your story and how this book is a reflection of what you truly went through.
Yeah, actually, the book started because I decided that I was going to write the book after coming from a conference meeting. And it was a 4-day conference, and it was amazing. I was in the presence of Lisa Nichols and some amazing, great speakers. And when I was leaving, I realized there was a shift in me, which I talked about in the beginning of the book. And then I realized that I was not the same person who walked in when I was leaving. I knew at that moment that I couldn't hold on to my story anymore. You see, Jennifer, like probably most people, I grew up in an environment where you are not supposed to tell what happened to you.
Right.
So for years, I buried, my secret. And when I realized that my secret was not for me to keep, but for me to change the world, I started seeing it a different way. And then I decided, well, you know, it's about time, because this is not about me. This is about the people that's going to hear the story and how it's going to affect them. I'm a survivor, like I mentioned, of domestic violence. I unfortunately entered 2 toxic relationships. And it's funny because the first time when I walked out, I told myself, well, I know what domestic violence looked like. That would never happen to me again.
Right.
And years later, when I found myself in another relationship that I did not recognize what it was, then that relationship even took me to a really greater spend time in my life, because I was trying to understand, why is it different than the previous domestic violence relationship? The fact is, Jennifer, no one really detailed to us what domestic violence looked like. Not only we're not supposed to talk about it, but we don't even know what it was. See, the previous marriage, that relationship was physical. The abuse was physical. So when I enter into another relationship, I made sure that there was not going to be any physical abuse. But then I didn't recognize the mental abuse.
Right.
I did not recognize that it actually exists. And that's when I realized that I'm trapped and I didn't know what to do. It took me years. It took me years to finally find myself, finally decided, okay, that I was going to get help. Yeah.
What was that breaking point that told you, that said, I need to get help? What point did it come at when you finally realized that you needed to get out of that relationship? And what forced you to get help and get support?
That's a good question. Actually, it was after years of going to the doctors. I had a constant migraine. Couldn't understand what happened to me. Every single day, I would go to work and I would come home with a migraine. And I remember one day I went to the doctor's office and then the doctor sent me to see a specialist. And he said, no, you need to talk to someone, because they have done all type of tests. My neurologist has done all type of tests. They've done some blood work. They've done some intensive work trying to find out what was the cause of my migraine. And they couldn't find out what it was. And it wasn't until I started talking about what was happening to me. And then I actually decided, okay, well, I'm gonna see. At that time, my doctor had to refer me to a psychologist. And then in sharing my story, I realized that all these years that the husband was telling me there was something wrong with me, there was really nothing wrong with me.
Right.
And that's when I decided, okay, well, I'm going to start taking care of myself.
Right.
And then turn to the journey of self-love.
You know, what's interesting about your story is that sometimes you don't realize that mental abuse can leave such more of an impact than the physical abuse. And it sounds like that's what you were learning throughout this journey as well. And some women or men, even in any situation like this, may not be able to recognize that abuse and those patterns.
Mm-hmm.
What are some warning signs that you can help with other people who are listening in today?
Well, one of the first things that I noticed when I started getting help was that I started paying more attention to the name calling, to the constant negative words. Nothing good ever comes out of you. You're not worthy of anything. You will never succeed in life. Why do you even bother when you will never succeed? You're not even a good mother. There were so many on a daily basis, constant reminder of how bad you are, that it started to engrave in your DNA, and you start believing those words. And worse, you start acting as though they are real. So when you start believing that you're not worth anything, then you actually act as though you're not. Then things that you used to value in life mean nothing to you anymore. The people that you love, you start staying away from them. The things that made you feel good in the past, you kind of just don't want to do anything. And that's when depression kicks in.
Right.
because you isolated yourself. And that's exactly what the abuser wants you to do. Because the more you isolate, the more power that person has over it.
Right. And when you're in that state of isolation and, like you said, spiraling into depression, how do you get out of that state? I mean, I know you experienced that personally. What were some things that you did to get out of that state? How did you develop that mindset to be resilient, to overcome?
Well, throughout the whole journey, I knew there was something wrong, but I never really fully took responsibility for the fact that it was wrong with me. I believed it because it was sent to me on a daily basis, but deep inside of me, apparently I didn't believe it. I heard it, but in my deeper subconscious, I did not want to accept it. And I think that's what changed in my life, because the minute I started receiving counseling and talking about what was happening to me, everything came back and I realized, wow, this is not who I am. This is not who I am. And also because in the process of sharing my story with my psychologist the very first time, I also found the courage to start telling my family about what happened to me.
Right. And that must have been a really hard journey. I think that might have been the hardest. And I understand that you were talking about in the beginning of not speaking about these things and those cultural barriers that exist with issues like domestic violence or so many of these issues that are hard to talk about. How do we begin breaking that stigma? How do we begin opening the doors of communication so we can speak more openly and honestly, and we can be able to tell others around us when we're in these situations?
I really believe the first thing we all need to do is to be honest with ourselves. I think it really starts with self, because for me, once I understood, okay, there is a problem and I'm part of it, I needed to know what I had to do in order for me to get out of it. I am a problem solver by nature. So whenever someone comes to me with a problem, I'm trying to find out, I don't focus on the problem. Now I need to find a solution.
Right.
You see, all these years, I didn't know what it was. But once I sat with someone and then I had some clear understanding as to what was happening, then I started this journey of not just to get more clarity. Why did it happen? How did it happen? What could I have done differently? And what is it I have to do from now on in order to make sure it doesn't happen?
Right.
And I would encourage anyone who's ever been in domestic violence, regardless of what type, of abuse, to seek help, because there's no way we can do that work ourselves. Right. It takes a special expert, someone who knows the field, to guide you through that journey. It takes someone who not only been there, but who also learned, studied, did research. You see, as a relationship coach myself, I realized that I couldn't just come in and tell people, this is what happened to me, so let me tell you how to do it.
Right, every situation is unique.
Yes, I had to learn. I decided, okay, well, I have a social work background. I'm going now to become a certified life coach, and really understanding the concept of where these things started, how do they affect, what are the signs, and how to get out of them.
Right. And as it's interesting, as you begin to make that mindset shift and you began to open up and truly feel every emotion, I can only imagine how difficult that was. And what were some of the steps that you had to go through to truly feel everything? I mean, I know the pain and the grief that was probably coming out. And for those out there listening, I know that some people just don't want to feel that pain and that grief, but I think it's a part of the healing process, right?
Definitely. Definitely. For me, I did a lot of crying. And the first thing that I had to learn was, what was my role in this? Because it wasn't a one-person show.
Right.
What did I do to attract this? What was it in me that made me susceptible to these types of relationships? So I had to understand me. What was it I could have done differently? What was it that I learned in the process? I had more questions than answers. But over the years, I got more clarity because I realized that what I could have done differently was to really know what domestic violence was. I knew one, but I didn't know the other one. So I had to forgive myself for not knowing.
Forgiveness.
The other thing that I had to do is, why did I tolerate someone to talk to me the way he did and poison my mind as though I was not worthy to be alive? In that process, I also had to forgive myself because I could not control somebody else's words.
Right.
Or opinion about me. So it was a lot of forgiveness and a lot of acceptance. What role did I play in this? Because we all played a role in this.
Right.
It doesn't just come in and then somebody's doing this to you. We allow things to happen because we don't know better.
Right.
But
So
like
it's
I said,
really a lot of journey of self-love and self-care and forgiveness and acceptance, and these are
yes.
all beautiful core values that we must embrace. And your story is just so beautiful and inspirational, and how you are giving back now, and now that you are coaching other women, what are some of the things that you are seeing in other women, or I don't know, maybe men as well, in coaching your clients, and how are you helping them to deal with some of these issues?
Well, one of the things that I do is I will, because my book really has most of my story. So I encourage my clients, read this short little book because it has lots of gold and diamond things in there.
Let me see the
And
cover. You look beautiful on that cover. I love that yellow. It's so bold and beautiful.
thank you, thank you. And so one of the things that I do with my clients is really, when they come to me, we have to go back into knowing who you are. Because most people who's been in toxic relationships have been defined by their abusers. And those words that were instilled in you, although you tell yourself, well, I'm okay, you still remember them. They're still engraved somewhere inside of you. And they will appear in different aspects of your life when you least expect them to show up. They will show up in something, but then it's confusing because you don't really know what is happening to you. So when you take the time to know who you are, then you no longer give somebody else the option to define who you are. So that's one of the most important work that we need to do with ourselves. The first step is to really find out who you are.
Right.
And embrace self-love, yeah, in the process.
And I can imagine for some, I mean, even thinking about it from my perspective, and for anybody, figuring out who you are, finding your purpose, finding that true self can be a difficult and painful task. And as you are guiding and empowering so many women and your clients throughout this, what are some of the obstacles that you are seeing that they're going through? What are some of the things that they're having a hard time sort of overcoming?
Well, one of the things that I noticed that some of my clients are dealing with is the self-talk. We tend to create stories in our mind without really having a communication with the person that we're living with or married to. Because let's say the person say one word, instead of asking for clarity, we take that one word and we run with it. And then we create a whole story. And then we start acting as though it is true.
Right.
So now we start treating that person as the villain that we created that person to be in the story. But then what we realize is when you take time to ask questions and talk to someone, you realize that your assumption of things was not their intention. So communication is very, very important.
Yeah, that happens so often when communicating with spouses or significant others, or just anyone in general, as you're building those relationships, those fine lines of communication can become so tangled and so misguided often. So yes, you're so right about having that open line of communication and truly listening, truly hearing each other, and truly being able to guide each other through whatever issues that you're having. So I know you're guiding people to have better relationships, remove the toxicity, and bring in the love, embrace the love. So what are some tips and strategies you can give anyone listening in today to guide them through this process? I mean, I think everybody needs a little help in building better relationships, right?
Definitely, definitely. One of the things that I really emphasize on when coaching my clients is really for them to, first of all, we talked about finding who you are. And second of all, to really have a clear vision of what your partner looks like, really in every aspect. And if you can take the time, and I'm going to share this analogy that I use often, is that if you were to go buy a car right now, you will do all the research necessary. You'll find out what brand you want, what color you want, how much money it's going to cost you. But you'll also Google to see to see reviews on it and see what people think about this car. And you would also go to different dealers and find out, what options do you have? All this to take a car that's going to take you from point A to point B. That's all. But when it comes to relationships, I notice that we meet someone and then the next day we're not in a relationship with that person. We need to take time to really find out what we want in a relationship so we can attract the kind of person that we want. I'm a firm advocate for compatibility because I believe it does matter. Although there's some challenges when you find your mate and this person is compatible to you. There's some challenges because now if you're a strong-minded person, most likely this person is too.
Right.
So now the skills on how to communicate, the skills on how to be a good listener, like you just mentioned, are some things that are going to help you once you find your compatible partner and enjoy the relationship you always wanted.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And I also think it's about sharing the same core values, which is similar to what you said, being compatible, ensuring that you have those same values and that you share similar goals and wants and needs. I know they always say opposites attract. So should we just forget about opposites attract? What about that? What do you take on that one?
Well, opposites attract because what's inside of you is going to be familiar to that person that you're going to attract. The challenge is you're opposite because you're different, but you have scars that you pick up along the way. You have things that happen to you that are inside of you. And these things are magnet to people that are like you. Although you may have different upbringing, different background, but the things that you learn throughout your life, the scars that you have inside of you, these are the things that are going to attract the people inside. And that's why we have to be mindful, because that's how we end up in toxic relationships, because that magnet inside of us that want to either take care of someone or provide for this person or listen to that person. And these people also, they have the tendency to draw on to people who want to give to them. So when you recognize what you're looking for, you can identify those toxic relationships very early on.
Right.
And it's been amazing for me to meet people and guide them on this journey. And it just makes me feel good knowing that, okay, while you went through all that, it wasn't for nothing, because now you're changing lives.
Oh yeah, your purpose has become so clear to you. I see that you're walking that path, and everything that you've experienced, you have used that to build your character, to build your faith, and you are such a strong-minded, empowering woman. And I'm just so blessed to have you as a guest today and telling your story and empowering everybody else who's listening. Tell us what is in store for Coach Maggie. I know you have your book, which we want to know where we can pick up your book for everybody listening in, by the way. And you are the founder of Owning My Own Destiny, I think it's called. Tell us a bit about that business as well.
Yes. My LLC, it's called Owning My Destiny. And my website is www.owningmydestiny.com. And it's very easy to reach out to me. You can also call the business line, which is 305-546-9679. You can schedule an appointment with me for a free consultation to purchase the book. You can do it on Amazon or also on my website. But I just wanted to add this, because often people ask me, are you married because you're coaching people on how to find out?
That was going to be my question. Didn't want to be too forward, but that was going to be my next question is what's next for you? What's your life like now?
Yeah, I am actually in a loving relationship. And my husband and I found each other 2 years after I walked out from the toxic relationship.
Beautiful.
And also now understanding and living with someone who is compatible helped a lot as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I'm assuming now that you fully, well, I wouldn't say fully healed, but you're on that journey to healing, this relationship is probably so much more healthier, and you're truly able to open up yourself to your partner.
Yes, it's been one thing that my husband tells me that I repeat often is, he says, well, he must have done something right for God to bless him with a woman like me. Aww. But I say the same thing about him. So, and that's when I have no regrets for all the pain that I've been through. I have no regrets because they have molded me to who I am today. So for those of you who are going through something, please find the courage to get some help, but learn the lessons, because that's what life is all about. Teaching your lesson and then share that lesson with somebody else, so they too can learn from your mistakes or from your journey, not really a mistake, from your life journey.
Right. Beautiful. Coach Maggie Kanzki, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. Everyone tuning in, please go pick up her book. Show us that book one more time so we can make sure everybody grabs that book. Go check it out. Owning Your Own Destiny. I love your story. I love what you're doing for women and for everybody across who's listening today. What are some lasting words of inspiration for anybody out there that may be going through some of these tough times, may be scared to get help, may be scared to open up and communicate? How can they reach out? What can they do?
Well, if you feel that you want to talk to someone and you don't know what to do, the first thing that I can tell you, you have to remember, we are in this journey for a reason and for a season. You have one shot at this thing called life. Your job is to ensure that journey. So don't hold yourself back and miss out on opportunities. Have the courage to pick up the phone, call someone that can help you. And if I can help you in any way, please reach out to me, www.owningmydestiny.com. Leave me a message. I've been on the journey already. I know what it's like. There will be no criticism because I know and I understand what you're going through. Just don't stay in it forever. If your guts tell you you are in a toxic relationship, it's because you are. Please seek help. Domestic violence is not acceptable. And also there's an 800 line, a hotline that you can call if you're not comfortable to talk to anyone yet, but at least call the 800 number. Hopefully we'll be able to post it if possible, so you guys can have access to it. Because domestic violence should stop right now, regardless of what type of abuse it is. It needs to stop right now. Thank you.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And we will have that number available. Coach Maggie, thank you so much for your words of inspiration and wisdom. For everybody tuning into the Simply Real podcast, please make sure if you are in a situation like this, you seek help immediately. Reach out to Coach Maggie. She has offered her assistance and without judgments, of course, and wanting to help and empower. And for those of you tuning in today, thank you so much for tuning into the Simply Real podcast. Coach Maggie, it's a pleasure having you, and we definitely want to have you back here again. And we look forward to many more beautiful conversations. Keep empowering, keep encouraging. You are a phenomenal, phenomenal inspiration, and I'm truly privileged to have you as a guest today.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the Simply Real podcast, everyone.